Charles Huff joins us, head football coach, University of Southern Mississippi. Coach, I'm going to start as big picture as I possibly can with you. In your opinion, in your mind, what is the biggest difference between a winning program and a losing program?
Probably just attitude. And that's not, that's holistic, that's, from the program, in the building, coaches, players, all the way to, community administration, everything, just the attitude in which you approach, one thing is which you approach everything. Obviously, I'm not blaming the fans for, not catching the ball or those type of things, but I just think it's all collective. It's all the expectations, it's all the accountability, it's all the commitment, it's all the discipline. I tell guys all the time, we all have a part in this. In order to everybody, it's not just going to be one coach or one player or one administrator. It's going to take all of us, and obviously, no one wants a losing program, but I think if you say, what's the biggest thing, just the attitude in which you approach everything.
What's a non-negotiable in a Charles Huff program?
Discipline. You got to be able to do what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, the way it's supposed to be done. You got to do it that way all the time. And when you don't, there's got to be consequences. And I'm not talking, putting kids in timeout, but, you can't have, you can't expect to have the benefits of a disciplined person or a disciplined life if you're not. And you have to realize that that's the, deciding factor. Every day we have choices to make. On one hand, here's something I know I'm supposed to do, but I really don't want to do it. Can I make myself do it? And on the other hand, here's something that I really want to do, but I know I'm not supposed to. Can I keep myself from doing that? Those choices and decisions in every aspect of our lives, every aspect of our days, we have to make more conscious choices and decisions with the discipline needed to be successful. And that's academically, that's, decisions we make in the community. Obviously, that's on the football field. But I think that's the biggest thing, the discipline and the consistent discipline, not, well, today this is, we're going to enforce discipline on this, but not on this. I think that would be the biggest.
When you think about the transfer portal, we hear about it, it's hard. It makes a coach's job hard. And I see where that comes from. But in some ways, you think 10 years ago, taking over a program that was 1-11, you've got to rebuild everybody from the start. With the transfer portal, does that make your job a little bit easier coming into this Southern Mississippi program? Because not everybody went through that 1-11 season last year.
Yeah, to be honest, you probably don't take a 1-11 job, if you don't have the transfer portal. And that was a big piece of my decision. I felt like regardless of what the roster looked like or regardless of what state the program was in, the transfer portal gives you a chance for immediate resuscitation. That doesn't mean that we just automatically win a championship, but it gives you a chance to lay out the lines of what's going to be required to be a part of this program. And if you can't do those things, whether that's athletically, discipline-wise, decision-making, the transfer portal gives you a chance to go out and get guys who can. And I think that allows, a quicker turnaround in, a program that maybe hasn't had success in, in recent history. And I think because of the transfer portal, kids aren't going in the transfer portal saying, hey, I'm going to X, Y, and Z because they're winning, or I'm going to X, Y, and Z because they have a big stadium. Kids are going to the transfer portal because they believe relationship and opportunity wise, it's the best for them. So it's easier, not easy, but easier, to flip a program's win or loss record by changing the people. 10 years ago, you'd have to probably wait 4 years to get recruiting classes in and develop players and hope players mature and matriculate through your program. But now, obviously, it can be done a lot quicker. That doesn't always mean that quick is right. I think there's still a development piece. There's still a maturation piece that has to go on. But you can, solve some of your problems quicker than a 4-year fix.
You brought in a lot of your guys from Marshall. They followed you down there to Hattiesburg. How much does that expedite the process for you this spring?
Well, it helps because they know, what to do and what the expectations are. They know kind of the routine. Every program has a routine that they follow, whether that's winter conditioning, spring ball, summer or season, whatever it is. Everyone has a routine or a schedule. Everyone has that. The players that we brought with us, kind of understand that schedule. So it's a little bit easier now for, the new guys to say, okay, well, I'm not sure what to do, but if I follow these guys, I'm probably going to be closer to right than wrong. And it brings us a heightened sense of confidence and, everybody talks about a standard, right? It brings a heightened sense of that. This is how we practice. This is how we conduct ourselves. This is how we represent this university. And once you have a good group of those, I don't like to call them leaders, but a good group of those who know what to do, it's easier for guys to gravitate towards those guys. So now they know, well, this guy knows how to prepare for practice, so let me spend a little time with him. This guy knows how, to show up into the building or how to watch film or how to go to the weight room. So let me follow him. And typically what you find is the confidence in what those guys operate in reignites or rejuvenates some guys who maybe didn't have, that positive, kind of person to follow, or that positive standard to kind of try to achieve to. And it kind of gives them some energy. I think that's what's happened with a lot of the guys. You talk about blending, 2 different, 3 different, 4 different teams. That's what's happened. Obviously there's a mutual respect when someone wins a championship, you have mutual respect for them. And what it does is that respect turns into a competitive encouragement. And now I want to be better. Now I'm working, next to, if me and you went to the golf course with Tiger Woods, we'd be trying to hit better golf shots. Not saying we would, but we would be trying to. And I think that's what's starting to happen. Guys are trying to do better. And what it does is even the guys who are trying to do better that maybe aren't at the level of athletic ability or understanding, because they're trying to do better, they're improving. And that's what you ultimately want.
Coach, if we go to the golf course with Tiger Woods, I'll just caddy for you. We'll run out of balls in about the 4th hole if I'm hitting them. I'll just caddy and I'll make fun of him, and we'll do it that way. So I doubt you remember this, but I spoke to you when you were up here at Mississippi State, when you were on Joe Moorhead's staff, and you talked about something that stuck with me through the years about coaching football like basketball. And you made the comment about the Golden State Warriors. Why shoot 2s when you can shoot 3s? And that's something that I've held on to for the years for whatever reason. When you look at this Southern Mississippi roster and the players that you brought in and the players that you inherited, do you have the shooters, I guess is my question. I'll ask you a basketball question. Do you have the shooters to run that kind of offense right now?
Yeah, offensively, I think we do. What we've got to get done is we've got to understand how and when to shoot. And that's the biggest piece. The system is a little bit different from what we did at Marshall. So there is still a learning curve even for the guys that, were with us. But we still have the talent. We still have the athletic ability. We still have the confidence. Now we've got to learn how and when to shoot, and what are the chances that we need to take, and what are the leaps and bounds that we need to make over the next, 4 or 5 months. When do we, press a little bit more as far as, the tempo or the amount of reps in practice? When do we scale back, to kind of prepare for the next phase? So yes, we still have 3-point shooters. Now we've got to kind of reshuffle of when to shoot. Everybody can't just catch the ball and shoot. You got to kind of understand there's a cohesion that goes with, offense, defense, and special teams. So we've got a bunch of, 3-point shooters, but now we got to get the cohesion. Last year, still in the basketball vein, we kind of took the dream team approach, where now you're taking all of these transfer portal superstars, right? Players that come from other teams, and, every kid walks in the building, he thinks he's the best player. And I encourage that. You should bring your ego. into this building, because that's who makes you who you are.
When you travel and you talk to Southern Mississippi fans, what are they asking you, and what are you asking them?
They're excited. I mean, they should be. Whenever you get a chance to believe in your program again or see hope in your program, it should create excitement. They all want to know, what can we do to help, and what can we do to get this place back rocking like it's been in the past. They all want to know, what are the things that are going to separate us from every other school in this conference. Obviously, I'm very honest with them. I don't have a magic wand. I think back to the Remember the Titans movie, and Denzel said, I'm just a football coach, man. I'm not Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, or Jesus Christ. So we we got to go out every day and get better. I'm not going to wave a magic wand and make all these players great and make every play. But I do tell them that, in order to have good players, it takes money. Winning has a price. Sometimes that price is monetary. Sometimes that price is, commitment of your time. We've got to sell the stadium out. We got to get people in the stadium. Sometimes that price is commitment of your resources. There's a lot of businesses. There's a lot of people that have helped this program be successful over the years, and we've got to get them back involved. And then obviously there's a monetary price, right? There's an NIL and revenue sharing and foundation and all of those things. You don't just, snap your fingers and become winners. It costs. And I've told them, if you are willing to pay the cost, I will be willing to carry the cross, which is the burden of every day of coming out and making sure this program is getting better, making sure that we are good stewards of the money, the resources, and the time that people give us. Making sure we're good stewards of the young men in our program, making sure we're treating them right, developing them right. And making sure that there's a product on the field in August or September that the fans can be proud of. Winning or losing comes down to execution. But how we play and how we take the field and how we represent this university is 100% controllable. The execution is, there's some other things that come into that, but the how, that's controllable, and that's what we'll control.
What do you like the most about your coaching staff that you put together?
I think there's a good balance. I think there's a good balance of youth and experience. Sometimes you can get, a staff of, super, super, super experienced coaches, but they can't relate to where the game of football and where kids are today, because obviously, it changes. And then you can have a staff, so young that, yeah, they can relate, but they haven't seen enough football to be able to adjust. Football, goes around. It starts, 10 years ago, it was wing T and triple option. Well, now it's the same thing, except we backed up in the shotgun and it's called RPOs, but it's the same kind of theory. So I think you got to have a balance of, youth and experience, for those things. I also think you got to have, regionality awareness. Mississippi is a special place, but it's also a different place. The Delta is different than the coast. North Mississippi is different than, South Mississippi. So you got to have some regional awareness, so when guys go into these areas, they know what they're walking into, or they have some familiarity with what they're walking into. We have a huge advantage in this state with the junior colleges. You got to have coaches that understand that. You got to have coaches that are willing to build those relationships. I mean, you've probably seen it, not just here with any school in the state. Kid comes out of high school, goes to junior college, develops, goes to school in state and does great. You got to keep those relationships. So I think those are probably the two things, the balance of youth and experience, and then the regionality and awareness of where we are.
A couple more questions for you, Coach, and then we'll get you out of here. We talk on this show about Southern Mississippi as that is a program that can be that group of 6 playoff team. They are a program that has the foundation, the support, the recruiting profile. They can be that team that gets into the college football playoff. Are we correct? Do you believe that your program can be that team?
Yeah, I think, now, to be completely honest, any team can be that team. It's about what you do on a daily, consistent basis. I think we have an advantage here, like you're talking about, because of the history and tradition, because of the foundation, because of the resource opportunity. Obviously, you got to be in a situation. When I say resource opportunity, we can recruit in this state and in this region and recruit some really, really good football players. There's a monetary advantage in this region because of the history and tradition of this place. Obviously, the conference we play in gives us a platform, for credibility. All of those things matter. The thing that we've got to understand is, and this is holistically, not just the team, but, the entire fan base and everything, we've got to win today. And winning today means we got to keep our eyes on what's in front of us, and not, okay, how do we get to the college football playoffs? How do we get better today? How do we get better players in here today? How do we get 1-0 today when we get to the season? How do we separate ourselves and be one of the top teams in the Sun Belt? And as you take those incremental steps, you will be gaining on the ultimate goal. But when you focus on getting to the college football playoffs, then you're probably not taking care of today. And I think that's what happens a lot of times with teams who have, like you say, the potential to get there. It's when we can get to the college football playoffs. Well, we're 1-11. We probably shouldn't be talking about playoffs anything, maybe the Mississippi high school playoffs, but we should be talking about playoffs. And that's not I don't want that to come off as disrespectful or, I just want us to make sure we understand where we are. I grew up in the country.
Yeah.
If you get your truck stuck in the mud, you can't think about going to the party. You got to figure out, how do we get this truck out of the mud right now? And I think that's where we are. How do we get the right mentality in the building on a daily, consistent basis, the right players in the building? How do we get them better today? How do we get them to be better students today? The byproduct of those things, you will put yourself in a situation where if you win more days than your opponent, you'll be looking at a situation where you could be in the college football playoffs.
What excites you the most about being the head coach at Southern Mississippi?
The sky's the limit, man. What great situation would it be for everyone in this community, everyone in this region, everyone at this university to pull the rope in the same direction and do something special? There's not a lot of times in life where you get a chance or an opportunity to make history, and there's a lot of times, a lot of teams and people go through life and they win a championship, but we've already won 10. I was blessed enough to win a national championship at, Alabama. That was great, but they'd already won 7 or 6 or 5, so it was kind of like,
yeah, them, it's job. Like 15, coach. I mean,
yeah, and that's not a knock to the team that we won. And there's obviously special moments, and every championship and game and season has its own story. But it was kind of like, yep, we got it again. We got an opportunity here, at Southern Miss this year to do something really special, and to truly be remembered, for the rest of time. And that's what excites me the most. I guess it's the opportunity, to do something special. I mean, how great would it be for these young men that join our program, to live the rest of your lives and say, we did something special? How great would it be for this community to say, we went through a trying time, but man, that 25 season was special. That's what, for me, the opportunity to be the leader of something special.